Hello, so if you were not here for the lecture on the 18th, here we are so that you can be doing your active listening notes. So we have, of course, had the time for you to prep your lecture notes. So here we go. Factors contributing to urbanization. So what is urbanization? It is the idea of people moving from rural or country living to the cities, either for work or for a lot of reasons. So population growth. People migrated from rural areas to cities in search of employment opportunities. As we saw with more efficient agricultural practices, fewer farmers were needed. There was that whole enclosure movement that we talked about. So people are starting to go to cities to look for jobs. Technological advancements. There are a lot of innovations during the Industrial Revolution that created a demand for workers in urban areas. So as these factories were popping up, they needed people to run the machines and make the products, right? And then agricultural changes, improved farming techniques, enclosure movement displaced many rural workers, forcing them to seek employment in cities, right? So the living conditions, if you have hundreds of thousands of people suddenly moving to cities, there's not going to be housing for them, right? So overcrowding is going to become a really big issue. The rapid influx of people into cities resulted in cramped and crowded living spaces. As you can see, this wouldn't be a unheard of thing. This image is a little more recent, but during the Industrial Revolution, not uncommon for 14, 15 people to be living in a one-bedroom apartment, right? Because there just wasn't enough housing for all these people. That's also going to lead to sanitation and hygiene issues. So the lack of proper sewage systems and waste management led to unsanitary conditions. So you couldn't just go to a toilet and flush it and then go to the sewer and you'd be done and everything. You would go to the bathroom in a bucket maybe in your house and just throw it off your balcony, out your window, into the street. So there was literally human waste just in the streets because so many people were going at a time. They didn't have time to make these sewer systems yet, or they didn't have advanced sewer systems. So think of how the boys' bathroom is here, but imagine that for an entire city. Poor housing conditions. Many workers lived in slums and tenements. Yeah, again, just not very well built, even when they were making them, because so many people needed them so fast, they needed to just build them really fast. So what is the impact of growth of cities? So the wealthy are going to stay wealthy. This image look familiar. It's from the French Revolution, but I think it still applies to this, right? The wealthy are living off the backs of the poor and the working class. Working conditions and labor exploitation. Factory workers face long hours, low wages, dangerous working conditions. Not uncommon to work 16 hours a day, go home, sleep for a little bit, and then come back and work 16 hours a day again. And there's going to be very dangerous working conditions. If you died, they didn't care. They just replaced you the next day. So they had no big incentive to keep you safe. There's nothing forcing them to pay out your family. But this is also going to lead to the rise of the middle class, created opportunities for entrepreneurship and the emergence of a middle class. So more shop owners had an opportunity to be created, right? Urban versus rural lifestyle. So economic opportunities in cities. Cities did offer a wider range of jobs. It wasn't just one store in your town or working on a farm. It was multiple stores, multiple restaurants, things like that. And they had access to more goods and more services in a city. So it also gave people more reason to want to live in a city, more things to do, right? Traditional agrarian life in rural areas, agriculture was the primary occupation. And with that, it's just a slower pace of life. And then cultural and social differences. Cities were centers of innovation, cultural exchange, and social mobility, while rural areas were more traditional. So things in the cities were always changing. So the culture is changing a lot more. Rather than the same families being in the same town for hundreds of years, you suddenly have people from all types of life coming and living in one area, and their cultures kind of coming together. Government responses to urbanization problems. So the government sees the issue, right? It's not like they're totally blind to it, but they're not going to respond maybe as fast as we would like. So Factory Acts and labor reforms, government introduced legislation to improve working conditions and limit child labor and set standards for wages and hours. We're going to get more into this later with the labor unions, because they weren't just giving these better working conditions out of the goodness of their heart. They're giving them because labor unions had to fight, they had to strike and not work at their places and risk their lives or risk their wages in order to get these better working conditions. The upper classes weren't just going to give it to them for nothing because they wanted to be nice. They were giving it to them because they had to, otherwise no one would work for them, or things like that. Public health initiatives, sanitary reforms, and establishment of boards of health aim to improve sanitation and reduce spread of disease. So getting adequate sewer systems, they see these things as problems and they are doing stuff to fix it. And then housing regulations, governments enact laws to regulate housing standards and address the issue of overcrowding. So limiting the number of families that can live in a place, making sure these housing places are built up to code. The role of philanthropy. So what is philanthropy? It's basically like giving to charity. So contributions of philanthropists, wealthy individuals, not all are going to be bad. They do support social causes like funding schools, hospitals, and other charitable organizations. A lot of times can be used as a tax write-off, so it's not for nothing. But establishment of charitable organizations, philanthropists founded organizations to address social and economic issues faced by the urban poor and impact on living conditions. Philanthropic initiatives helped improve living conditions, healthcare, and education for the urban population. So again, a lot of times when we look at history, we see the bad and we see all the terrible things that happen and how we need to come out of it. But there's also things of good. People see the issues in society, and some of them actually do want to make the world better, do contribute to making it better out of just wanting a better life. It's not all going to be bad people throughout your life. Challenges and tensions. So crime and poverty are really going to rise a lot. Urban areas experience higher crime rates and widespread poverty as a result of rapid urbanization. So these housing tenements, if they are now regulating them more to where only a certain number of people can live in them and they haven't built enough new housing, then that's going to lead to things like homelessness. Political unrest and protests, working class organized movements and protests to demand better working conditions and political representation. So again, that's the labor unions fighting for their right to make a better world. And environmental degradation, industrial pollution, and deforestation contributed to environmental problems in cities. So there was no EPA, there was no one to regulate dumping toxic waste into the rivers. There was no one to regulate how much of a forest you can cut down to feed into your steam engines. So there's going to be a lot of very negative health effects at this time. Lastly, urban cultural developments, rise of consumer culture. Growth of the city is going to fuel consumerism and capitalism, with people becoming increasingly focused on acquiring goods and services. So there's going to be more stuff to buy that makes your life easier, which is going to free up more free time, right? So entertainment and leisure activities, cities offer a variety of entertainment, such as theaters, music halls, and parks. So there's going to be more to do. These industrial technologies in some ways are going to make life easier. You don't have to do all the things that you had to do before. You don't have to wash everything by hand. You have electric light bulbs so that you can do things at night without having to have these candles and things like that. And technological advancements in transportation and communication, improved transportation system, and the invention of the telegraph are really going to transform urban life. All right, so then at the end, make sure you are doing your exit ticket.